I'm Father Lampy.
And I'm Father Schumacher. And we
We
are the Associates.
Timely question, one that's on a lot of people's minds about the COVID vaccines and the morality regarding these. So here's the question. I've read and later found confirmation in printed materials that testing for the COVID vaccine used human embryos from babies dating back 40 or 50 years. However, the time frame isn't as important as the fact that they're using aborted babies. How can a Catholic take the vaccine knowing this, and how immoral the whole process is? If you could shed some light on that subject.
Sure. So this is kind of a timely but also important and in some cases tension-filled kind of question. People have their opinions, they have their sides, and so rather than just paraphrasing or giving an answer for myself, I would prefer to give you the answer given to us by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. This particular document is from the Secretariat of Pro-Life Activities, and it is from January 2021. The document is called Answers to Key Ethical Questions About COVID-19 Vaccines. And so in the document, it brings up that question of morality. And it asks, is it morally acceptable to receive COVID-19 vaccine that uses abortion-derived cell lines? And the answer that they give is as follows. Given that the COVID-19 virus can involve serious health risks, it can be morally acceptable to receive a vaccine that uses abortion-derived cell lines if there are no other available vaccines comparable in safety and efficacy with no connection to abortion. If it is possible to choose among a number of equally safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines, the vaccine with the least connection to abortion-derived cell lines should be chosen. If a vaccine with no connection to abortion-derived cell lines is not readily available, vaccines that use such cell lines only for testing would be preferable to those that use cell lines for ongoing production. Such choices may not be possible, however, especially in the early stages of vaccine distribution. In that case, one may receive any of the clinically recommended vaccines in good conscience with the assurance that reception of such vaccines does not involve immoral cooperation in abortion. But there's also another kind of associated question. Okay, it is acceptable, it is okay for us to receive these vaccines, but are we obligated? Do we have to receive the COVID-19 vaccine? And so the very next question in this document addresses that. Is there a moral obligation to receive a COVID-19 vaccination? And the answer they give is as follows. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has noted recently that vaccination is not, as a rule, a moral obligation, and that therefore it must be voluntary. In any case, from the ethical point of view, the morality of vaccination depends not only on the duty to protect one's own health, but also on the duty to pursue the common good. And it is said, in the absence of other means to stop or even prevent the epidemic, vaccination may promote the common good, especially to protect the weakest and most exposed. For a vaccine to be effective in protecting society, most people need to be vaccinated in order to break the chain of disease transmission from person to person throughout the community. The congregation has also said that those who refuse to get vaccinated must do their utmost by taking all the necessary precautions to avoid becoming vehicles for transmission of the infectious agent. In particular, they must avoid any risk to the health of those who cannot be vaccinated for medical or other reasons, and who are the most vulnerable. So we see there's not a moral obligation there, but there is encouragement, and we ought to take into account not only our own health, but the health of others in determining whether or not we want to be vaccinated. So that's the official answer, but we'd like to expand upon that a little bit.
Sure. So maybe going into why is this a moral question in the first place? Perhaps it hasn't occurred to some people that anyone would not want to get the vaccine. So maybe describing exactly what's going on with some of these questions would maybe help that. So the problem with a lot of modern medical research is that they use products, they use cell lines, stem cell lines. You remember that a couple years ago back in Missouri when that bill or that constitutional amendment was made about stem cell research in the state. The problem with stem cell research from aborted fetal tissue is that you're getting the stem cells from babies that were killed by abortion. To use those stem cells, even decades later, is still a participation in the evil that was done. Think of it perhaps this way. If your great-grandfather was a Jew who had been killed in a medical experiment at Auschwitz and they still had some of his body that was being used in a lab somewhere, you'd say, you should stop using that. That's disrespectful to his memory and to the suffering that he endured. It should be buried. He should be put to rest. Yes, we're not continuing to kill him. We're not continuing to do abortions in order to get stem cells for these stem cell lines, but there is still a moral problem there. The question here in this particular case, and with the case of many vaccines, is it morally permissible to use a vaccine, which is clearly a good, if it's been produced in these immoral ways? And that, the church has said several times, is down to prudential judgment. If the good that is to be accomplished is big enough, then the fact that you don't want this evil means that you're not participating in that. You're not. You don't want the evil, but you are allowed to do something that is good, even though it also has an evil effect. We do this all the time. You drive your car to work, even though it has the risk of injury to self or to others. You judge that risk to be a worthwhile evil to endure because you don't want the evil, but you're willing to endure the evil, the risk of the evil, for the great good that comes from you being able to work or go wherever you want. The same kind of reasoning is happening here. A vaccine is a great good. It can be a great good. It can prevent great evil. And if it also has an evil side effect, it may still be morally permissible if the good is bigger than the evil would be. And you don't want the evil, obviously. You can't will to participate in the evil of the abortion or the continued research. But if you do object to those things, which is something we should maybe talk about, if you do object to those things, then it may still be morally permissible to get the vaccine. So you have to make that judgment. Would it be morally permissible to get a vaccine that's made from this kind of evil method of research for something like chickenpox? I would say probably not. Chickenpox isn't bad enough to justify that kind of participation in the evil. Would it be justifiable to get a vaccine if there were a worldwide outbreak of smallpox? That's a lot more likely, because smallpox is awful, it's disfiguring, it's debilitating, and it's deadly in a lot of cases. So you have to make the judgment there, and that's what the church has left open to the judgment of individual Christians, especially looking at what is my particular risk and the risk to those around me. So if you're working in a hospital, maybe you have a higher obligation to get the vaccine than someone who is young and healthy and doesn't work with people who are at risk of getting COVID. So it is a prudential judgment, but we should talk a little bit more about that obligation to object to this.
So in a 2005 document, the Pontifical
Commission for Life?
Commission for Life, thank you. Pontifical Commission for Life talked about these very things about other kinds of vaccines. And one of the things that they mentioned was the obligation for us to object or to protest the use of these cell lines. Yes, it can be morally permissible to take the vaccines that took advantage of these cell lines, but we're obligated to resist that, to make our protest known, to make it clear that this is not okay. And oftentimes that part of the church teaching is forgotten. So what we should be doing is writing letters and sending them to the manufacturers and distributors, letting them know that we don't want to have these kinds of vaccines. We want ones that are free from any connection to abortion at all.
And in fact, that kind of research is possible. In fact, with these COVID vaccines, one of the things that's very frustrating to faithful Catholics is that the research could have been done without fetal cell lines. It just wasn't done without fetal cell lines. And so they have the opportunity to do this in a morally permissible, in a morally pure way. And they choose not to because many people in the secular world don't understand the moral problems involved here. So this can add to your prudential judgment. It may be that because COVID, in your judgment, is not that difficult problem for you and the people near you. So this might be the opportunity for people, for Catholics, people of moral conscience on this issue, to say, look, you want us to get vaccinated. You think it's important for lots of people, for the whole country to get vaccinated. Provide us a vaccine that is morally acceptable to us. If you think it's so important for everyone to get vaccinated, then do it right. You know, we have an opportunity here where it's not as clearly a danger as something like smallpox might have been, or polio, a widespread outbreak of polio, that we all need to get vaccinated pretty quickly. We've been going on for a year, and we're doing all right. So there isn't that kind of strict urgency with COVID vaccines that there might be in another case. This might be the opportunity for us to kind of as a group put some pressure on the medical establishment, medical research establishment. There's another thing that might go into this. The second half of this question was asking about, there are people who are worried about possible side effects of the vaccines. And does that come into this calculus at all?
So that would be part of the prudential judgment. These are relatively new vaccines. They've been expedited in the process of development and testing, and there's a lot that we don't really know about them. And so there are some people who might be concerned, well, what about those who are pregnant or trying to get pregnant? What are the side effects of these vaccines? Would that cause problems for the child? We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty there. And so some people may, in new prudential judgment, decide or discern that now is not a good time to receive the vaccine because of so many uncertainties of side effects and how it might affect them or the people around them as a result of it.
So maybe to sum up, it is, and we want to say this clearly, it is acceptable for a Catholic to receive these COVID vaccines. Some of them are morally acceptable. However, they're not obligatory, and it does come down to a prudential judgment on, is the evil to be endured of a lesser quantity, if you want to put it in that sense, than the good to be accomplished. And that really does come down to a personal prudential judgment that we can offer some guidance on, but I can't say to any particular person, no, you definitely cannot or you definitely must receive these vaccines.
So you might see that there are some theologians, some religious leaders who are taking one side or the other of absolutely not or absolutely you have to. That is not the official teaching of the Catholic Church. So thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe so that you can continue to get access to the content that we provide to you for Ask the Associates. And
Ask the Associates will have new content every other Wednesday.